and welcome to another session in the CEDAW Convention Speaker Series being hosted by Equality Bahamas. We are very excited to be engaging with experts who are on or have been on the CEDAW committee to really give us a better sense, more practically, of what the CEDAW Convention is all about, going article by article. So basically every month we will be going in depth on an article, talking about what it means, how the committee interprets the article, where the Bahamas stands today, and the kinds of recommendations that are being made, as well as how Equality Bahamas, other non-governmental organizations and advocates, and people in the general public can help to advocate for the change that we need to see gender equality and an end to gender-based violence and all forms of discrimination against women and people of diverse genders. We are really excited as we are getting closer and closer to recognizing the 30th anniversary since the Bahamas has ratified the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. We will be noting that anniversary in October of this year, 2023. So this series is in the lead up to that. Please be reminded that we welcome your participation in this session. You can either register to join us here on Zoom or you can watch live on Facebook. Please put in your questions and comments and we'll be sure to raise them when we get to that part of the session. And note that this is a pro-woman space. This is a pro-LGBTQ plus space. We won't be tolerating any forms of misogyny, sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, any form of hostility against anyone, particularly those who are in situations of vulnerability. So we are going to get started. We are very, very fortunate to have our very own Marian Bethel, Bahamian attorney and member of the CEDAW committee, also serving as vice chair. She is with us today. She's been helping to coordinate these sessions and bringing an introduction to today's speaker. So I'm turning over to Marian. Thank you so much, Marian, for all of your work to get us here, to keep this series going,
Yes.
and for being here to introduce one of your colleagues and friends.
Yes. Good morning, Bahamas, and greetings from Geneva, which is where I am right now, attending a UN CEDAW committee meeting session. And good afternoon to other listeners around the world, including those in Cairo, Egypt. And so it is my pleasure to introduce to you Her Excellency Ambassador Naela Gabr, with whom I had the great fortune of being on the CEDAW committee with her for 4 years, from 2017 to 2021. And it was really an extraordinary time. Naela has been on the CEDAW committee since 1989, right through to December 2020. She served as chairperson of the CEDAW committee from 2009 to 2011, and a committee member thereafter. Her Excellency was also the rapporteur for the general recommendation on rural women, which is why we really wanted to have her expertise here with us today. And as she's an expert on rural women around the world, and drafted the general recommendation on rural women. So it's really important that she's here, and very significant. So Ambassador Gabr is a career diplomat, and she served as a representative from Egypt as ambassador in Paris, France, and in Geneva, Switzerland, where she was appointed also as ambassador to Pretoria, South Africa, and Botswana and Lesotho from 2000 to 2002. And then she was a permanent representative of Egypt to the UN office in Geneva and its specialized agencies from 2002 to 2006. And she was also an assistant minister of the foreign affairs in the Egyptian government for the multilateral affairs from 2005 to 2010. Currently, she is chairperson of the National Coordinating Committee for Combating and Preventing Illegal Migration and Trafficking of Persons in Egypt. And so Ambassador Gabr has had a very extensive career in the Foreign Service and as a women's rights, human rights advocate. And she was awarded the Palm Academic Officer of the Order of the Palm Academy, which was for her services rendered to the French culture in December 2012. So I want you to welcome Ambassador Naela Gabr, and as a former member of the CEDAW committee and an expert on women's human rights and in the field of trafficking and illegal migration and trafficking in persons. Welcome, Naela. It is so good to see you again after having left the committee. Really, we're so glad to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here with us.
Thank you, Marion. I'm very pleased to be back in a way to speak with the Bahamas ladies and to be back to the work of CEDAW and to speak about a subject very dear to my heart, rural women. If I can start by speaking very briefly about our work in CEDAW. Our work in CEDAW, as Maria has said, that we are speaking about all forms of combating all forms of discrimination against women. And for that reason, when we are discussing periodic reports of state parties, we have to detect what are the difficulties, and we have to try to suggest ways and means to solve these difficulties and to give state parties a roadmap to help them in this way. So through our discussions, we realize all over the years that the problems concerning rural women were important, and that we don't hear about group, task forces, syndicates working to discuss such problems, to support them, to give them a hand, to speak about their concerns in parliament, in the newspapers. Such presence was almost non-existent. For that reason, I personally, coming from a country, Egypt, a large country with a large majority of rural women, I was concerned to start this adventure, if I may say, and this effort to draft a general recommendation on rural women. What is a general recommendation? A general recommendation is an effort done by the committee to draft a kind of soft law or a document. This document is not a legally binding document, but it has a moral and a political status. And we in the committee, we value and we respect our general recommendation, and we expect also state parties to value and respect this general recommendation and to take them into consideration while working on the topics dealing with women's rights. So this is the essence of the activity. We detected that there is a problem and there is a lack of interest about this problem, and we decided to give countries a hand and also to give rural women in such countries support, kind of support. So this is the raison d'etre of the general recommendation and why we started working on it. And finally, we had in 2016, the GR 34. If we go to the GR, I myself, as the person having a responsibility of leading the working group, I was of the view that if you want to tackle an issue, if you want to address the problem of rural women, let us address them the way rural women can understand. Also, not just the state party, but also rural women. So you'll find, if you go to the text is as simple as possible, as user-friendly as we were able to do it. No complication, no difficult wording. For that reason, I think that it is an easy text to be understood by women and for women by state parties. So this is my first remark. My second remark is that, of course, all general recommendation CEDAW had prepared and approved. I think that we reached general recommendation number 40 on indigenous people and indigenous women, of course. All general recommendation can apply to the situation of rural women. If we speak about general recommendation on access to justice, number 33, it is extremely important for rural women to have the access to justice. If we are speaking about recommendation on indigenous population, among rural women, there are indigenous population. If we speak about gender-based violence, we'll find that it's important. If we speak about the recommendation on trafficking, it is important for rural women. And I let you know, as I'm working now on a ministerial function concerning the combating trafficking in person and illegal migration, that this is also important for rural. Okay, so let us agree that the topic is important for a large majority all over the world. 1/4 of the population of the world are rural women. And that we go through the general recommendation. I'll be keen to go quickly and also to listen to your question or to any remark. I think that I had 30 minutes, or I exhausted almost 10 minutes in my introductory remarks, but let's start our work. Our work, we can go through the articles of the convention, article by article, and we'll try to see how we are thinking of adapting this article to the needs and concern and problems of rural women. Of course, I have to give a remark that Article 14 of CEDAW is one of the lengthiest articles of the convention, and that this article had a real importance because we don't see in a legally binding instrument or convention such a focus on rural women. So this is also a remark to be highlighted and an issue to be highlighted. So if we go to the Article 14, and we'll start by the first part, and usually as a person who had always worked on human rights, the first part has to be on legislation and legislative part. And about legislation, of course, we are asking countries to have their legislation respecting the rights of all citizens and no discrimination among citizens, and to give women the equal right as men in legislation, and also not just in the legislation, because we people who had worked in the UN system, we know that you can have a good legislation, but the important thing and the criteria for success is the full implementation of the legislation. So here we are starting by adopting legislation without discrimination. So here it is important, and here it's important also to say that rural women are in need of such legislation and to understand their rights endorsed by such legislation. Why? Because in many countries in the world where there is a majority of rural women, I don't think that you have this problem in the Bahamas, but in many countries of the world, among them my own country, Egypt, you have an important percentage of illiteracy, and illiteracy among women and among rural women. This will lead us to a problem. They are not only illiterate, but also there is the legal illiteracy. If they are illiterate, they won't know about their rights. So this is a problem. And we have in General Recommendation 33, an important thing to be highlighted about access to justice and access of women to justice. And this has been highlighted also in General Recommendation 34. So first thing, to amend the laws, to withdraw any form of discrimination in such laws, and to help women, especially rural women, to have access to justice, to understand their rights, and to have the possibility of, practically speaking, going to court, because many times you have the court far away from the villages and from remote areas. And this is an important thing. If a woman, a rural woman, wants to go to court, it's a problem. If there is no accessibility, so the issue is meaningless. So here we are asking for to have affordable justice, if I may say. Of course, maybe in the Bahamas, we can tackle the issue about having different judicial system, and there is the customary law, and in rural areas, many times the customary law is prevailing, and here we need to have this balance among laws. So let's go about increasing rural women's awareness and legal literacy, and providing them with information on their legal rights. I'm reading here from the text. On the existence of rural legal system here, and ensuring free or affordable access to legal services and legal aid, and dismantling barriers to rural women's access to justice. Here, it's important. This is the basis. The basis is to start by law, by respecting the rights and having this endorsed in a law. Let me go to Article 2, and I know that the Bahamas had a reservation on a sub-para of Article 2, which is the main and the core article of the convention. My own country has a reservation, but our legal people, our jurists, are saying that this is not impacting negatively on the respect of the convention and the implementation of all articles of the convention. And we hope that the same thing applies to the Bahamas. Concerning Article 2, and I hope that you'll be in the future working hardly on withdrawing the reservation, but it is the core article, and asking to withdraw all form of discrimination, especially in legislation and in practice. The other thing is on having a mechanism dealing with women and with the right of women. And I noticed that you have improved in your country the situation of the mechanism and or the department dealing with women's rights. And I hope that au fur et à mesure, this mechanism will having the needed human and financial resources to enable your country to detect any difficulty and to solve any difficulty concerning your women. In our case concerning rural women, it is important that this mechanism has a kind of decentralization, and to be able to have offices all over the country and in rural and remote areas, and to tackle an important issue, which is the issue dealing with harmful practices, because in rural areas you have different forms of harmful practices. Let me highlight, as a person coming from an African country, a very dangerous practice in the countries of the Nile Valley, which is the FGM, which is meaning the female genital mutilation. It is not linked to any religion, but this is a practice in such countries, and we are taking a very firm position against it in my country, and the law is against it. And the religious people too, but this is some mentality, it's in the mind of some groups. Well, it is important that women mechanisms deal with such practices, among them, of course, the early marriage, and in some countries, which is the having other form of discriminatory stereotypes against women, and especially when we reach this part, which is extremely and crucial for rural women, is the question of the land property and land inheritance. Some stereotypes also saying that women cannot inherit land and must not be in a position of land, and other and all issues dealing with land, like water and natural resources also, they are considering it not as a priority for women, and this is most dangerous issue for rural women. Let me go also concerning one of the issues important, the gender-based violence against GBV, and this issue has to be taken into consideration when we are speaking about rural women. And here we are asking the religious community and the community leaders to take care of this issue and to help awareness raising about the dangers of such an issue. It's a crime. Gender-based violence is a crime, not just a violence. And as we were speaking, also the question of marital rape. This we can speak about it later on. But here, when we speak about violence, it is important to take this issue into consideration and to take it seriously, and very seriously. I want to go to an article important for rural women, which is exploitation. Exploitation has to be addressed. And when we are speaking about Article 6 of the Convention, which is trafficking in person and exploitation of prostitution, we find that in many cases, rural women are in a situation of vulnerability for being exploited in trafficking in persons, because sometimes they are going to the city, they are working as in domestic works in the city, they are trying to work in the market in the city, and this way they can be exploited, either exploited in work or any compulsory work, or be sexually exploited. And we have the other form of exploitation of prostitution. And here it's an issue to be dealt with. I know that the Bahamas, as I went through some of the report of the World Bank, and in your economy, the issue of tourism, the activity of tourism is extremely important. And for that reason, I'm raising a flag about importance of taking care of this article, because sometimes when you are having tourism and tourism en force as an important economic activity, there is a danger of exploitation of women, either in trafficking or sexual exploitation. And here, of course, when we go to rural women, let's go back to our rural women. We are asking countries to study the root causes of trafficking. Usually, trafficking is linked to economy, to poverty, to extreme poverty. And economic empowerment of women, of course, is the miracle solution in this regard. I think that time is running, so I'll have to go quickly to the basic social services. And here, basic social services is a problem for rural women. Most of the time, countries and government are paying the special attention to the city and to the urban population, and rural women are facing discrimination, and they are at the secondary plan of priority, because generally speaking, the priority is given to the urban part of the country, and then come the rural part and rural districts and provinces. And here you find that basic social services, i.e. education, health, employment, housing, all such kind of services are not as good as in the city. And this is a problem. This is a problem, because in education, if the education is not good, is not reaching everybody, is not accessible. When I'm speaking about accessibility of education, it's physical accessibility, is to enable the girls to reach easily schools, and to have a way of transportation, a decent way of transportation, an easy and not costly and affordable way of transportation. And this is not existing in many places. Important is to have school in the agglomeration when we find rural women. And this will solve a lot of problems. In some of the African countries, the girls were reluctant to go to school because of the long way going to school, and they were facing problems of harassment and sometimes rape. So this is a serious issue. And without education in our world, when we are suffering from the illiteracy concerning new forms of technology, so when we are speaking about the normal education, so what kind of difficulties they can face. So basic social services, we are asking countries, state parties to provide the rural areas with this kind of services to enable all citizens to have this quality social services and, of course, rural women. Education is important, health is important, because during pregnancy and to control the number of pregnancy, all such day-to-day problems must be tackled by government. These are the responsibility. And of course, let's go back also to the question of employment. And here I have to flag an important issue, which is the work of rural women is not paid. So it's a kind of unpaid work, unpaid effort. So how can we take this into consideration? How can we help, economically speaking, these women? And their work is considered in the informal sector. If they work in the land, they work in the market, they are providing some services, all of these activities are in the informal sector. It is important to highlight that the economic support and the support via credit, small microcredit, is extremely important for rural women. We in Egypt, we succeeded in this regard, and we discovered that women are the best one to make real profit of the credit they are having, they are receiving, and to reimburse also the amounts. The best one, the most disciplined one. So this is an extremely important issue to be highlighted concerning rural women. When I'm speaking about economy and I'm speaking about all such services, I'm not asking rural women to deny their roots, to deny their culture, to deny all the cultural around them. If I speak about Naela, I'll tell you that I'm very supportive to the traditional handicrafts, to all the tradition. You can find it in the rural areas. And here, we need to preserve the tradition. We don't want to take rural women from their roots, okay? We want them to be educated, healthy, to have an income, and to be to live normally their life as rural women if they decided to continue like this. As we say in French, and Marion can help me, I don't want them to be taken from their roots, déracinés, as we say in French. I want to go to an issue which is of priority to our world today and to rural women par excellence, which is climate change. They are suffering from the impact of climate change, desertification, hurricanes, floods, earthquake, all such things, especially water scarcity. So this issue has to be taken into consideration by state parties, and they have to support rural areas and rural women. at the same time, there is the issue of having the problem of big companies, mega companies coming to large exploitation in rural areas. And this is a challenge to rural women. And we have studied in CEDAW many of such cases. I think that I went through the economic, social issues, and I want to go to the question of, insist on the question of land and resources. As I said at the beginning, we are in Egypt criminalizing the preventing women from inheriting the land, because in some part in Upper Egypt, this is a very bad practice, and it is sanctioned by law and sentenced by law. I'm speaking about land and natural resources, accessibility to land, to natural resources, to seeds, to all forms of resources enabling women to have a good exploitation of the land. Women can work on organic farming. We were speaking about organic farming in the general recommendation. And of course, you are highlighting that rural women are providing the country with food and nutrition. And this is one of their privileges, to provide us with such important thing. And now some of the countries, among them my own country, after the, and due to the war, and some of the political difficulties in Ukraine, there is a lack of some agricultural products, and the prices are going up and up and up. And here we have to respect what rural areas are providing to us. And wheat, there is a crisis in the price of wheat, especially for a net importing country of wheat like my own country. And this is an important thing, the price of the bread. And here we had to pay respect to rural women and to what they are doing to us concerning food security. If I go to marriage, Article 16, we in the African continent, we are having the question of customary marriage and the question of registration of marriage. We have also the problem of bigamy and polygamy. And we have to go to Article 16 about the marriage and women in such a situation, to insist about the rights of women in marriage, in the solution of marriage, and concerning the children, alimony, and the custody of the children. And this is an important issue to be highlighted, whatever is the system in the country, whatever is the law, prevailing customary law, normal law, but we cannot accept but to have equal right for women as for men concerning relation within marriage and in the solution of marriage. I think that I exhausted my time. I tried to be as brief as possible, but as for me, this issue is so dear to my heart, I went to some of the details, and I have to remember to congratulate Bahamas for the 30th anniversary for adherence to the convention, and to wish you all the best, and to your women all the best, and to enjoy their rights. And here I'll try to stop here and to seek any to wait for any question or any need for clarification. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Naela. This is an excellent overview of Article 14 on rural women. And one of the things that I noticed you did throughout your presentation was make the link between Article 14 and many of the other articles of the convention. And I think we often think about things in isolation. So we might think about Article 2 on its own or Article 5 on its own, but it's very important to note that interdependence, that these articles kind of work with each other. And during your time on the CEDAW committee, did you see that sort of link happening within the constructive dialogues with states, making these connections between articles, and particularly with Article 14?
Well, yes. Why? Because there is a discrimination against rural women linked to all articles on the question, and especially basic social services. So for that reason, there is a link, and we have to take all articles together. CEDAW is a package, and I cannot give priority to some articles while neglecting some of the articles. No, to have all the rights for women, you have to give women all rights, starting from legislation, going to basic social services, and etc. Okay?
Thank you. For those who are joining us in Zoom, this is a time for you to raise any questions, comments. We just ask that you use the raise your hand feature so we can see that you'd like to speak, and then you would have the opportunity to unmute. But do note that we are recording the session. So if you don't want your voice or your face or your name to be in the recording, you can use the chat, or if for some other reason you're not able to unmute, you can use the chat to share your question or comment, and we'll be sure to raise it so that we can get a response while we have Naela here with us. Naela, right now, Equality Bahamas is working on a project. We will be very soon advocating for some adjustments to maternity leave and an addition of paternity leave. So we have a more full parental leave following the birth or adoption of a child. Right now, it's 12 weeks of paid leave. So we've been having conversations. We have a survey out. We've been having focus groups where we're having conversations with people who are parents of children 7 and under. And one of the things that I think we don't often think about is that the women who are in what we call in the Bahamas, the family islands, our rural areas, many of the islands don't have hospitals. So what happens is when they get to a certain point in their pregnancy, they need to travel to one of the islands with the hospital in order to give birth, particularly if there is a complication, or they might be a little worried if something happens with baby. They need to have access to a NICU and specialists and things like that. How does Article 14 look at this? How does an expert on this issue look at this and make a connection with health, but also these very specific needs of people who are giving birth?
Well, this issue is extremely important, and it is important to have mobile clinics. In my country, large country, we have tried to resolve the problem with the mobile clinics, going to women. If it is difficult to have a hospital, at least to have the mobile clinics. So I support very much the interest you are paying to the situation, and especially during pregnancy, it is of priority to enable women for her normal life, normal right to have her child in a safe and in a safe way, and to be surrounded by all the needed support from medical support. Yes, yes. So yes, it is a problem, and in Article 14 and in the GR, it is indicated. And if you have time, we can go to the article, to the GR, and provide you with all the details in this regard. Yes. Health is a basic right for all people, and especially for women.
Thank you. Marian, please.
Yeah, well, yes, Naela, thank you for that response concerning the maternity issue and health, etc. I'm really interested in the issue of land and rural women and women's access to land for farming purposes. I think women around the world are some of the represent the largest numbers of women farmers worldwide are in the rural areas, but may not have access to land or own the land, etc. Then we also have the issue of, let's say, indigenous women in different parts of the world who are on the land, but you have huge corporations coming in and extracting from the land, destroying it, and the livelihoods of rural women. And so the problems are just so huge in terms of women, access to land, resources to make the land productive, food security. Women are at the heart of providing food for their families, yet we don't own the big businesses in terms of farming, etc., or access to land. So where have you seen progress in this issue of women's ownership of land in terms of rural women and their participation in rural development, and being informed and helping to direct and channel ways of rural development? What are some of the success stories that you've seen, either through CEDAW and your practice, and just what you know about women and land and our capacity to own land and work it as women farmers?
Well, thank you, Marion. This is the core issue of the article: is land property, land resources, access to seeds, new technologies, and also to have a kind of grouping in union and syndicates to preserve the rights. Till now, I don't see what are the countries who had realized a real progress in that regard. I've been ambassador to South Africa. I have seen success stories. I've seen success stories in some of the countries in Europe, but there are individual, but not a generality. For that reason, I think that in spite of all the progress, we need to see more support for women. I have in my own country some good success stories, but not in large scale, not in large pieces of land, no, but good stories and success stories. For that reason, if we want to realize a progress, we have the access to land, to water resources, because in the African countries there is a problem of water resources, and how to accede to the water resources, accede to seeds, and fertilizers, and to new technologies and forms of technologies to enable them to have a good feedback or of what they are doing of their activity. Otherwise, all this activity won't be economically rewarding for we have to support them in this regard. But let me go back that the most important thing is the legislation and the implementation of the legislation to enable women, rural women, legally speaking, to inherit land and to have in their possession the land that they have. As a widow or as a normal daughter having their inheritance in land. This is important issue to be taken into consideration. Let me, if I have time, if you allow me, and I think that I missed an important thing which can be considered as a result of all what you are saying, which is the political participation. I forgot to mention political participation. So if you give me 2 minutes to speak about political participation, I had always considered political participation as the result of all the rights provided to women. One, women have their rights, education, health, economic rights. You cannot have a real political participation without economic empowerment. Cannot. Yeah, it will be a slogan, just a slogan. They'll go, and without education, okay, women can go to participate in election, but to have a real choice in election, to have their voice of value, you must give them all the rights to enable them to have a real political participation. I have seen that in your country you have almost 18% of women in parliament. I hope that you will be reaching the 30% in the future. And also we are trying in Egypt also to have a good percentage. And I think that our percentage is almost a decent and good one. So very briefly, I tackled the issue of political participation. I was not able to go through all the details, but I was trying to give you the essence of the whole issue.
Thank you for making that connection. And for those that want to learn a little bit more about political participation and how it's addressed by the convention, by CEDAW, you can look for the recording that we had on that session. It's on our YouTube channel. So you can go to youtube.com/equality242 if you're really interested in delving a little bit deeper than we can right now.
And Alicia, without interrupting you, CEDAW is now working on a general recommendation on women and political participation. So Marion can give you an aperçu later on about this important activity of CEDAW.
Right. Yes, it was Nicole Ameline who did Article 7 and 8 for us in Women in Decision Making and Political Participation. And yes, and she also talked very passionately about the new general recommendation, GR 40, which is progressing really well right now on women in leadership and political participation. So that was a great session that we had with Nicole Ameline several weeks ago. And it's accessible now, Alicia is saying. Yes.
Yes, I'll put the link in the chat here as well as on the Facebook channel so folks can get quick access to it. We have another question here And you were talking earlier about marriage, and you raised this issue of the age at which people are able to get married, women and girls in particular. So we have a question. I put the full text of that article in the chat. So someone is asking if you can speak to what this means more precisely. Part 2 of, I believe it's Article 16. The betrothal and the marriage of a child shall have no legal effect. What does that mean? Oh, and the second part of the question is, are there countries where early age marriages are being overturned if it's considered to have no legal effect?
So, Naela, perhaps you can speak to us about child marriage in Egypt, and what is it criminalized? What is the situation? And this is Article 16 you're talking about.
Yes.
Yes, Article 16.2. What is the situation in regard to child marriage and the legislation around it?
Okay. First of all, I think that there has been an interruption, but I have the question and I can answer you. First of all, the question of child marriage is one of the harmful practices in rural areas. This is the first thing, and we tackled it in our GR. Yes, in Egypt, in some parts of Egypt and in Upper Egypt, and in some of the rural areas of Egypt, there is the practice of child marriage. It is criminalized by the law. Why? Because we have ratified the Convention on the Right of the Child, and the age of the child is till 18. So practically speaking, we cannot allow marriage before 18 for boys and girls. For that reason, it is criminalized. And for that reason, the parliament is thinking also of some of the amendments on some of the laws concerning the right of the child, to sentence the people responsible for such a crime. I'm considering it to be a crime, because the children are losing their childhood this way, and it is bad morally, but health from all perspective, it is a bad issue, and bad for the family and for the stability of the family. So yes, we are against it. We are against it.
Right. Yes. And thank you for that, Naela. So under the convention, then Article 16.2, under international human rights law, the marriage of a child is illegal, and it's against the convention. It's against the international human rights law. So what this Article 16.2 is asking every country around the world to legislate against child marriage, and also to specify in your legislation a minimum age of marriage. And the human rights norm and standard is 18 and above is when a young person can give consent to be married. In the Bahamas, we also have legislation that allows persons under the age of 18, I think it's between 16 and 18, to get married with the approval of their parents. So we're still trying to work on that so that it is 18 and above period, which would be in conformity with the international human rights standard.
Yes. So yes, we hope that in the future, the Bahama will withdraw reservation on 2, on 9 concerning nationality, and will adapt with the Convention on the Right of the Child, especially that you have adhered to 2 additional protocols to the Convention of the Right of the Child. So you are very supportive to this convention. So you'll abide by it. Okay, so this is, it will be work in progress, I hope,
Yes.
in the future. Yes.
The second part of the question, do either of you know of any cases where an early age marriage or child marriage has been overturned?
What do you mean by overturned, Ali? What is
So
overturned?
perhaps there was child marriage, and then to come into compliance with CEDAW and with international human rights standards, a country has overturned a marriage between people who are under 18, or with one person who's over 18 and one under.
Ah oui. My grandchild is explaining to me in French. Yes, yes. It is difficult to be done, practically speaking, especially when you have children, because in such situation, the situation of children will be extremely difficult. There'll be a child out of wedlock, okay? They'll be considered as children born out of wedlock, okay? But the question is that the responsible are criminalized, but we cannot nullify the marriage itself, but people responsible for that are to be sentenced. You understand about the problem applying to children in the situation of such a marriage.
Okay, okay.
Hmm.
And I think we have a question from Facebook. Lauren, do you have that question for us?
Yes. Hi, Naela. Thank you so
Hi.
much for being here. We have a question from Gaynell Curry on Facebook. She asks, just following up on land rights for rural women, has the committee addressed climate change or environmental concerns for rural women and women of African descent?
Yes. In the GR 34, we have addressed it, and at the same time, we have addressed it in two other general recommendations. The one on climate change, 37, if I'm not mistaken, and the one on indigenous population, also in both the two other GR, we have addressed it. Yes, it is important it's of priority. It's of priority. The question of the impact of climate change on rural women, because rural women are the first one to be impacted negatively by the climate change.
Thank you.
Do you know if those general recommendations are specifically speaking not only to rural women, but also to women of African descent?
Well, I don't recall exactly, but of course, on indigenous people, you'll find it under indigenous people, GR 40, for sure, you'll find it.
Okay, so we're looking at general recommendation 34 and also on 37 on
37 on climate change, yes, and 40.
and 40. Okay,
Right.
those are the ones.
40.
And several, and those particular GRs do take into account intersecting forms of discrimination. So they would then refer to people of Afro-descendant women and other vulnerable groups. So ethnicity and race discrimination are generally a part of each of these general recommendations in regard to intersecting forms of discrimination.
Exactly.
When we're putting those links in the chat, in the comments, in Zoom, as well as on Facebook for those who want to delve into those. Do we have any other questions or comments or ideas that anyone would like to raise here in Zoom or on Facebook? We'll give you a few minutes. I know sometimes it takes a while to form a question or a comment in a concise way. So we'll give everyone a bit of time there. I have another question for you, Naela, because you brought up trafficking.
Yes.
And when I think about the rural context, particularly in the Bahamas. It's an archipelago and these islands are all split up. And the geographic location of the Bahamas has always been very advantageous for traffickers, whether they're trafficking drugs or trafficking humans. And I wonder if you can say a little bit about the responsibility of the government in the Bahamas for its borders and the ways that the borders can be breached so that trafficking is taking place, but not necessarily of Bahamian women. Bahamian women are included, but maybe women being brought from other countries through various means and then trafficked within the Bahamas. Is there anything that you can say about the Bahamas and its obligations to trafficking that originates in other countries?
Well, as I'm traveling tomorrow to Austria to attend the Commission on Crime Prevention, and I'll be dealing and representing my country in such discussions concerning trafficking and smuggling of migrants. So it's a topic à jour. Voilà. Yes, I don't know if the Bahamas had ratified the two Palermo protocols. I don't know.
Yeah.
Really, I'm not in a position to assess, but if they have ratified the two Palermo protocols, one of them is dealing with trafficking, the other one is smuggling, concerning smuggling. If they have not yet, they have to do it. In all cases, this is that are instruments, UN instruments, which are now ratified by almost all countries in the world, because we are, all of us, facing such crimes. There is no country who can pretend not facing the crime of smuggling of migrants or trafficking in person. So this is a phenomena which is linked to the modern society, the facility in transportation, and even in telecommunication, because there is trafficking through internet and manipulation and exploitation through new forms of technologies. So this, first of all, to be brief, it is the responsibility of the state. This is a responsibility, a clear responsibility of the state to adhere and ratify the protocols, the instruments, the legally binding instruments, and to protect its citizens and people, foreigners coming to the country. We, for instance, in Egypt, the laws concerning trafficking is considering the victim, if the victim is a citizen of Egypt or a foreigner living in Egypt or coming to Egypt and facing any form of exploitation. And for that reason, this is a parenthesis, our media campaign, or our campaign, had a translation to English. How to say it? Il y a une traduction. There is subtitle in English to some of our media campaign, to it can be used by foreigners. So it is, to be brief, it is a responsibility of the state. And as you see, the interministerial committee I'm leading is working under the Prime Minister. So it's a governmental mechanism.
Thank you. And I see that Marion has confirmed that the Bahamas has ratified the Palermo.
Okay, great. We'll seek its implementation, full implementation, and that's it. And especially, I'm insisting on that you have an important activity concerning tourism. And tourism is opening the appetite for traffickers to work and to exploit people. whatever is the form of exploitation.
Yeah, that was a really important point that you made as well, that link to tourism that we have to definitely keep in mind. We have another question from Marisa. Can you unmute?
Hi, good morning, Marisa Smith, Bahamas, Zonta. I wanted to also confirm that the government of the Bahamas has ratified that convention, and to also say that the government has done an extremely good job in establishing task force as it relates to trafficking in persons
Yes.
that are interlinked with social services, the various agencies, and
Yes.
having the opportunity working with them through education and in action. I think that the Bahamas has done a great job in identifying and, of course, resolving such issues in our country. So it is just for information that there is an active and very focused group that deals with trafficking in persons in the country.
Perfect. Yes, yes, I remember now that in the concluding observation, the CEDAW committee praised the establishment of this task force or of this entity dealing, yes, interministerial committee. Yes, I remember now.
And one of the benefits of this is that budgets have been allocated to this task force to assist persons who are in great need, depending on their circumstances. So there is a very the great awareness between ministries and departments in trafficking of persons.
Yes, very good. We are working also on the establishment of a fund to help the victims of trafficking. Yes, it is important.
We are coming down to our final minutes here, and I just want to ask one more question before we close, Naela. I find it very interesting when we go to participate in some of these mechanisms and engage with treaty bodies and make our reports, and we know that we are producing shadow reports or parallel reports in some cases, and the government is submitting its own report, and there are very different perspectives, right, on what's happening. So it's important to have the sort of informal engagement on the sidelines of these events to really bring a wider and a deeper understanding of what's actually taking place in country. So we see that the government might go before the CEDAW committee and say that, oh, we've drafted this and we started this. And the committee says, great job. And then we go back home and it stays a draft or it stays in phase 1 and very little happens until the next review when the government might try to do a little bit more so that it can say that it moved things forward. Is there a way to engage before the next report comes up so that there's a little bit more attention on the fact that something is started before report time, but then after the report, it all goes quiet?
Yes, there is the follow-up procedure in CEDAW, and one of the achievements I've realized in CEDAW when I was chairperson of the committee is to have this follow-up procedure, enabling us as a committee to ask a country before coming to the next periodic report within, I think, 2 years to come to report to us about 2 main issues of priority. We have assessed that they are of crucial importance to be finalized or tackled by the state during this period. This is the follow-up procedure. And the other thing, the UN system, usually when countries are going to report to any treaty body, yes, they are speaking about what they are in the pipeline, what they have in the pipeline. This is good. but what is assessed is what has been achieved. It is welcomed, but it is not written in the report. The only thing highlighted and welcomed in the report is what has been achieved. The other is good. It's good for the discussion, is good for the good impression left to the experts, but no more than that. What has been achieved? What is in the pipeline is goodwill. Okay.
Mhm. This is very, I find it very interesting because we saw it at our CEDAW review in 2018, and then just recently at the UPR, because the Bahamas was up in the 43rd session of the Universal Periodic Review, and there were some of the same kind of things happening where the government said, and then we started this, and we have this draft. And I was thinking, yeah, it's been a draft for a very long time.
Draft is a draft. Draft is a draft.
Move forward. Yeah,
Make
very,
it.
and yeah. So you're saying what is achieved is what's
Yes.
important. So I definitely have to keep that in mind. Thank
Okay.
you so much for your time today, Naela. I know it's a weekend, it's a Saturday, you're ready to have some family time. So I won't take us any more overtime than we are right now. I'm very appreciative to you for coming and speaking with us about rural women. It is a topic, and this is a group of people that I don't think we put enough attention on. And you have really highlighted throughout your discussion that we need to be thinking particularly about rural women as we look at some of the other issues that we might work with every day, like health, like education, like land, thinking about the particular vulnerabilities of rural women, not because they're inherently vulnerable, but because, as you said, they are ignored and so much attention is being put in cities and in urban areas. So thank you very much for that. Thank you so much to Marion for coordination and for making that excellent introduction. And now I'm turning over to both of you, if you would like to leave us with any closing words
Yes.
before I plug our upcoming events.
Thank you, Alicia, for the invitation. Yes, it was a very nice interaction, and thank you, Mario. I'm very pleased to see you again, and I was very pleased. I hope that I was clear in my English. You know, I'm Francophone,
Yes.
so I've done my utmost with my English to try to deliver the message. And I enjoyed it very much. And I have to thank my grandson who was, come Ali, I have a big boy here, this gentleman and this tall gentleman. Say hello to the ladies.
Hello, everyone. It's been a great listen. And I must say that my grandmother was very stressed out at the prospect of working over Zoom, but I can see that it has functioned and that this very fruitful discussion has led to many realizations and good ideas moving forward. Best of luck to you in Bahamas.
And
Thank you so much. Thank you for your
He is
technical.
a young lawyer. He is a young lawyer. Now he is working, and he came to give me assistance and to support me. Okay, this is a good thing. He has his dog somewhere here. Also, the dog had been very calm too. Okay, ladies. I enjoyed it very much, and anytime I'm ready, yes, to be with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
And this is the ladies of CEDAW, Marion, don't forget.
Yes, absolutely. Take good care
Okay,
now.
dear.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right, for everyone else joining us, our next session in the CEDAW Convention Speaker Series will be on Article 13, focused on economic and social benefits. That is taking place on Saturday, July 1st at 10 a.m. the Bahamas time. You can register for that now. Go to tiny.cc/CEDAW13. It's tiny.cc/CEDAW13 to register for that session taking place on July 1st, 10 a.m. We're looking at Article 13 on economic and social benefits. For those of you in our Feminist Book Club, and for those of you who are not, this is a great time to join. Our next meeting will be completely virtual. Usually we have hybrids and we meet at Poinciana Paper Press, but Poinciana Paper Press is on a well-deserved break right now. So we will have a virtual meeting. We are reading The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. So there's still some time to read it until our meeting, which is next week, Thursday. And that will be taking place at 6 p.m. We usually go to about 7:30. To register for that, go to tiny.cc/FBC, as in Feminist Book Club 2023. Tiny.cc/FBC 2023. And we look forward to seeing you in the next sessions to come. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.